Another game theory video. A very super nerdy kind of game theory video, okay? So if you don't like nerdy videos like this one's going to be particularly nerdy, right? But I feel like generally people who watch these game theory videos probably are already pretty nerdy anyway, right? So maybe you'll watch if you click it in the first place, right? So I get asked would I like to make my own game sometimes or anything like that. First of all, I'm going to have to turn that down because she's messaging me. She is hot, but... First of all, I don't even know if it's possible to make a truly brand new game that is totally unique whatsoever, right? But of course I've thought about, and I do think it's possible to improve on games, right? So how would I improve a game like Street Fighter, say? Like if I was making my own Street Fighter game, right? And I want to make this specific because I think there is no perfect fighting game, all right? I think kind of in the general eyes of fighting games, what we think about fighting games, and this is a long preface, I know, right? I think there's three kind of 2D fighting games, right? There is a Street Fighter sort of fighting game, asterisk mark, King of Fighters, Fighters History, whatever kind of 2D fighting game, right? But generally Street Fighter. There's a verse style kind of fighting game. And then there's a Guilty Gear kind of fighting game, right? Like there's very important concepts of like systems, right? And those games, there needs to be all those kind of games because there can never be a perfect game, right? We need to have these kind of types of games, right? And you got to remember so you don't want a Street Fighter game to be too crazy in the first place, right? So if I was making my own Street Fighter game, how would I improve Street Fighter with my own thing, my own idea, right? So first of all, I'm going to like draw on this while I talk to you guys. First of all, let's just talk about this. I don't know how much in this series I'm going to do, but let's just talk about meter stuff and a few general ideas what I would do with Street Fighter first. So first of all, I know it's not super Street Fighter, but if I was making a meter, what would the meter be like in my Street Fighter game, right? So I know it's not super Street Fighter per se, and this isn't necessarily perfect either, right? Because I think there's pros to cons to doing everything, right? Some Street Fighter dudes, old guys, don't even like supers, period, okay, right? But I do think some guys don't even like big combos, right? But I do think that having supers and combos becoming bigger is a sort of necessary evil to Street Fighter that you can still progress Street Fighter while still having it in and still having it be a Street Fighter game, right? But first of all, I don't think Street Fighter needs level 1 supers, level 2 supers, level 3 supers, right? I think you could go a more basic idea of you have a meter, right? And if you have half, you have your little 50 right there. So you'd have your level 1 super. And then if you had 100 meter or whatever, you'd have a level 3 super, right? I don't even think that every character needs to have a level 1 super that needs to have a level 3 version of the super. I don't even think you need to do that. I think you could actually just have does Ryu really need to have so we don't need level 1, we don't need level 2, we don't need level 3. If Ryu has a 50%, if he has a 50% bar, does he need a super fireball that is a 100% super fireball version? I actually don't think you need to, dude. I think you could just have Ryu's supers in a game. And I'm going to go through other characters too to give you multiple examples. I'm going to go kind of long with this, right? I think Ryu, you could honestly just say his level 1 supers, his super fireball. And if you have a level 3, then he has a shin shoryuken, right? And I guess you could give him a super hurricane kick too. That could be a level 1. But I don't even think you necessarily need a level 1. And then I guess almost from a King of Fighter perspective, right? I don't think you need a max Shinku Hadouken. I don't think you need a max Shinku Tatsumaki Senpukyaku, right? I don't even think you need that. I think you could actually just do a level 1 super fireball, level 1 super hurricane kick. And if he has level 3, his level 3 is a shin shoryuken, right? But let's make this a little bit more advanced, right? I've told this before. I don't like EX moves. Generally speaking, I don't like EX moves, okay? At least the basic idea of an EX move is just a souped up version of a special move, I think is terrible, right? Okay, I think that's fucking terrible, right? I would make EX moves like more of like a Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear did EX moves. Whereas the EX moves were actually interesting, right? And I think if I was doing the bar, how would the bar work for an EX move? I think it would just be Actually, I should probably do this color so it shows up better. I think it should just be... that probably wasn't good. If you have a third of a bar, so you can have like up to 3 EX moves. That's not exactly right. But you have 3 EX moves while you're going through this, right? So if we're talking about what would some characters' EX moves be, right? Well, I've said this before. And when I talk about EX moves too, in a Street Fighter game, I don't think you should have EX fucking fireballs. Get rid of that. That's exactly why. Don't give characters EX fireballs. Because it's homogenizing, or what is that English word? Homogenizing or some bullshit. Homogenizing? I don't know what that word is, right? Whatever the case is, I think, because if one character has an EX fireball, every character needs to have an EX fireball. Because in a Street Fighter game, the fireball dynamic is too powerful. If we're talking about a Street Fighter game, to have a character that has such a easy, low meter usage to win in a fireball war is completely bullshit. So you don't want characters that have EX moves in the first place. So no EX fireballs. Get rid of that general idea, right? So what would you do for like an EX move? So let's talk about what could some moves be. So Ryu, I've talked about this before. Ryu doesn't need a thrust kick, right, as a regular move. Because Ryu would have a red fireball. That's already, and he can already knock down with the hurricane kick as well in a combo, right? So you would give Ryu, say Ryu's EX move is his thrust kick. So if he has a little bit of meter, he has a little bit more of an option. The EX thrust kick is an EX only move, dude, right? And you could also say maybe he has like another EX move. Maybe he does, he has his Street Fighter EX literally hurricane kick, right? Because that's another dynamic of Street Fighter. I don't even know if I necessarily agree with hurricane kicks going through fireballs very easily in more new school games, right? So maybe Ryu's EX hurricane kick actually will go through fireballs, you know what I mean, once it starts spinning, if you know what I mean. And he does his Street Fighter EX hurricane kick, whatever. I don't want to get too complicated with this, right? You could also make certain EX moves to talk about this more. Again, so if we're talking about Ken, what would Ken's supers be, right? So Ken could have a level 1 super. Is his shoryuken super, right? Maybe he is a character that has a level 1 version of his shoryuken, and then he has a level 3 version of his shoryuken where he spins and he's on fire, whatever, where the fuck it is, right? But you can also go from a perspective, does Ken need a super hurricane kick super? He already has 1 rush super. Does he necessarily need another super that rushes forward, right? Does he need that, or is it becoming sort of just picking and choosing, right? Now, you could say you could give him both a rush, since you could give him a rushing level 3 version of his super hurricane kick. But what I've talked about before, a more fun potential way to add in an EX move for Ken could be, say, make Ken's funky kicks. Okay, so Ken has his funky kicks like Super Turbo, but make them a little bit more versatile, a little bit more useful. I don't want to get too in depth with what I would do with them, right? But so think about Ken's EX funky kicks, right? What if when you do one of Ken's funky kicks, if you then inputted the motion another quarter circle forward plus 2 kicks, maybe he started doing the Shippujin, his hurricane kick super, right? Because those moves are already, like, you can link off them in certain situations, of course, and even in Super Turbo, right? But even maybe you don't get as much damage as you quotation marks should, since the overhead from it is slow, right? So imagine if you actually hit the overhead with it, instead of only being able to get the sweep, if you then inputted the extra motion, you know what I mean, for the EX move, that's his EX move, right? He'll do a little bit of that. He'll do his hurricane kick super, right? Or maybe even does the EX version, the Street Fighter EX Shippu hurricane kick, where he launches you in the air and then you can get a combo off, right? It adds another dynamic to Ken, right? And it makes the EX move interesting because it's making Ken kind of have a different dynamic on the character. Like, wow, he has kind of like a combo mechanic to him, right? You know what I mean? That makes him unique, right? And again, I'll just say, because I have thought about characters I don't care about. Like, look at like Blanca, something weird you could give this dude, right? I hope this is recording, right? It is recording, right? Say Blanca, right? Blanca's over here, and this is real nerdy, but so say Blanca's here, right? What could be an interesting move dynamic for Blanca? He's doing his electricity, blah, 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 right? Say a character like whoever it is, right? So when you're playing, you know what I mean? Ryu, say Ryu goes up like, oh shit, Blanca just did his electricity. I'm going to go sweep his ass, whatever, right? You know, whatever fucking move you're doing. Just for sake of argument, roll with me, right? What if Blanca's EX move, since we would be going off a super turbo idea or an old school Street Fighter version of this, what if when Blanca's doing his electricity, what if you could actually hop out of the electricity and it costs like a third of your bar, right? And so then Blanca, he moves backwards, right? Or he could move backwards or he could move forward. And when he moves backwards or forward, there's this like little trail of electricity, right? So Ryu just tried to sweep him and now he's going to move backwards and there's this electricity. And then it has a hitbox and it hits Ryu and it pulls you towards him and it can hit him, right? So maybe Blanca has kind of like weird mix-ups where like that, like, you know, like, oh, we did electricity, right? And, you know, Blanca has all this hop kind of shit, shenanigans with throwing and super turbo, right? And so say if you do an electricity, the dude blocks it. Then you press 2 kicks and you can move forward and then he crosses you up while it electrocutes you. He's at the advantage. Or he moves backwards, you know, and if you were to get hit by this trail of electricity, you know, it sucks you in and he goes for a mix-up. Or maybe, you know, while you're charging, if you're charging, or he's electricity while you're charging, if you roll out of it, you could roll out of the electricity and he does a rolling attack while he's in the ball and he does his little electricity super. Because does Blanca really need that rolling ball electricity thing as a super if he already has another rolling super in the first place? You know, I know they have different, you know, things, but trying to think of different ways you could make the character interesting, right? So maybe if Blanca hits you with electricity, right? Maybe then if you rolled for a little bit of extra meter, he has a one-hit electric ball. You know what I mean? You could give the moves different dynamics. The point is, you can add different kind of interesting things to characters by giving them unique EX moves, right? But what are other things that you could do with this bar? And I probably should have said this earlier too. I think with the bar, to make it more interesting, something that should go back to, is they never did anything again with that CVS 2 meter of the super bar. How if you had a level 2 super, remember in CVS 2 if you pick C Groove, you could cancel it with a special move. I think just adding something like that in a game with EX moves like this, right? You could potentially make Street Fighter actually almost too crazy for a Street Fighter game actually, right? So basically that idea, if you add 50% meter for your level 1s, right? If you have 50% meter for your level 1s, right? Whatever you're at, right? 4 if you take another, you know, and I guess we'd have to put a little another bar here. So then we'd have to put, you know, this wasn't exactly correct, right? If you had 50% bar and you could make it a different color or you could just like put the number on there so people can read along while they're playing so they know what they have. If you have 50% meter or 75% meter, you can then cancel your level 1 super for that extra quarter of a bar into anything, right? That would instantly add so much stuff, you know what I mean? Like, dude, so imagine, no, geez, who knows? Maybe Ryu did his super fireball. Maybe he wants to cancel it. Then like CVS 2, for a little bit of extra bar, he can hurricane kick out of it. He can then, if he had a little bit of extra meter, he could actually do the thrust kick out of it, let's say. You know what I mean? Whatever. Maybe imagine, here's a crazy combo for you. Like, imagine this Galaxy Brain. This is what I'm telling you. Just with this simple of a system, you could make a pretty fucking crazy Street Fighter game that would still appeal to even a lab monster. And you got to remember, I actually almost think it's insulting when people think of me as just a combo dude, right? But I know a lot of people like doing combos. So let's say imagine Ken in a Super Turbo game, right? Imagine Ken in this game. What does Ken do? Ken crosses up with a cross-up medium kick. He does a stand medium. He then does his quarter circle forward funky kick, right? And he does the overhead off of it, right? Then he links the duck little kick off of it. Then he does a shoryuken, right? That costs 50% meter, right? He then cancels the shoryuken since he has a little bit more meter, right? And he does another funky kick. He then canceled that funky kick, you know what I mean, with the EX version of it. Like, if he had enough meter, right? You know, whatever the case, right? Just giving you an idea, right? He canceled it like that, right? So then what would happen is he then goes into the Shippujira Jinra kick, blah, 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 whatever. He links off of it, whatever. The point is, you could do a lot of crazy shit, right? Going in and out of shit, whatever, right? Do you know what I mean? You could do a lot of potentially fucking crazy shit just depending on how much you want to say the EX meter costs, how much the bar costs, you know what I mean? You could actually do a lot of crazy shit like that. Maybe when, say, too, since, you know, it costs so much meter, you could cancel it on block, too. You know, whatever the case you want to do. Maybe Guy is in the game. Guy does his level 1 super. He does a run cancel, then he does a bush and combo off you. You know, whatever the case, then you juggle, whatever. You could still make it fun for a person that just likes labbing these weird combos, right? And it also lets you go back to that idea of CVS2 that you never actually went back to, right? So again, I don't want to make this shit too complicated because I could be nerdy for a while, right? You know what I mean? But, and I know do people say, would I add custom combos? No, I would not have custom combos in a Street Fighter game. Get rid of that. I would try to avoid that as much as possible. Would I have like an extra, you know, revenge bar? No, I just want one bar. One bar. Get rid of all this stupid like, oh, but you have your regular super, but then you have your revenge ultra plus ultra super, whatever. No, I don't want all these fucking comeback mechanics. I think people are getting rewarded way too much for fucking losing in video games. I would not want a revenge bar or anything like that. It's all these V triggers. I'm being rewarded for fucking me losing the game. It's fucking stupid, right? Just this, basically a CVS2, kind of a ghetto modified CVS2 bar. You know what I mean? With EX moves that are actually fucking unique and add something to the character or a new dynamic to the character, I think you could make a pretty fucking crazy Street Fighter game. Because you got to remember, some people don't even like supers in a Street Fighter game. I think there's probably even an argument that even dashing in Street Fighter is potentially not Street Fighter, right? So, again, I'm for supers, so I think supers are fine, but if I was going to add a comeback thing, whatever, I guess the only thing that I might be okay with is, I guess, if you had already lost a round and it was the round that you could lose, maybe if you only had a quarter meter left or 25% life left or a third of a bar, maybe your bar could be flashing. And again, just because people like the lab combos, maybe your bar, you'd get an extra freebie super. Maybe it would just pop up. You had 30% life left, whatever, and it's the final round. You don't get it every round. You only get it if it's the very last round. You have 30% life left. You get an extra bar. And then, boom, man, imagine the fucking combos you could do with that shit, dude, right? Man, Ryu, you know, dude, you'd be doing a ton of crazy shit. You know what I mean? And another point, I actually didn't mention this too. Why I think it's better to not have level 1 supers, level 2 supers, level 3 supers, right? Why is this better? Think about it from this perspective too. What does Ryu's Super Fireball do when it's with a little punch versus when it's like a medium punch versus when it's a hard punch? It still has the same function. Now imagine if you're playing a Street Fighter where each button allowed that super to have a slightly different function. Right? And what do I mean by that, right? So, okay. Imagine Ryu does his level 1 Super Fireball with a punch, right? With a little punch, right? Maybe for a nerd, you know what I mean? If you do it with the little punch version, he does a Super Fireball, and it looks like his Super Turbo version of the Super Fireball, right? And say when you do this version, maybe this version, the block stun on it is actually longer, like Super Turbo, right? So maybe this version of the Super Fireball is not as powerful as the other versions of the Super Fireball, but it kind of looks like the Super Turbo version of the Fireball, you know, whatever the case you're saying, you know what I mean? But if it was actually blocked or something like that, it actually leaves him at a bit of an advantage, right? You know, or something like that. Or imagine if you do the shin shoryuken, right? Imagine depending on the button you hit, maybe one version of the shin shoryuken is a super powerful CVS 1 version of the shin shoryuken. It does like fucking 75% of your life. It's fucking obnoxious, right? Maybe if you press another button with the, say you press the hard punch with the shin shoryuken, right? Maybe you'll do the Street Fighter 3 version of it, right? And that's the one you can juggle off of, right? So maybe that one does less damage, but you can build a little bit more meter by juggling off of it. So it depends on what point of the match you are where you would want to use that, right? So there's even just a little bit of a mind game there, right? That's why another reason I think that it's not, you don't need to have these, because just pressing a different button, you can have actually a unique version of that super, which I think is actually more fun, right? Do you know what I mean? It's fucking say guy, right? You know, say you're guy and you're doing guys, beat him up, or punch super in the air, right? And you know he has the last hit, either kicks you across the screen or it kicks you down if you do the level 2. Well, do you really need, you know, imagine if you press a different button with guy. One version does a little bit more damage and he shoots the guy across the screen, right? One version he does the kick where he knocks you down, and that's your hard knockdown version of the move, and he gets a better potential ambiguous cross up off of it. Just something simple like that, right? I think that would make Street Fighter more interesting, right? Would I have super cancels? Right. I mean, I might even say depending super cancels, right? Maybe super cancels you need to, maybe that takes a little bit of extra meter. Maybe some supers, you know what I mean, take a little bit of extra meter if you were to deem like, oh, this super's too good. Add a little bit of a dynamic to it or something like that. You know, there's so many different things. Just a simple bar, dude. Just a one bar. I don't want multiple fucking bars on the screen. I don't know if there'd be a guard meter. Maybe you could have a guard meter. I don't fucking know. I'd have to think about it, right? You know what I mean? But in terms of like super, dude, keep it fucking simple. Just one bar. I don't want to be rewarded all the time for fucking losing a match. One bar. And you could actually make Street Fighter still pretty crazy, right? Real unique EX moves. Not bullshit EX moves that is just a souped up version of an EX move that have no fucking thought in them. This is my EX move, but it does one extra hit. That's fucking retarded. You know what I mean? This is my EX move, but now my DP is actually invincible. No, get that fucking shit out of here, dude. I want real EX moves that are actually unique and add something to the character, add a sort of new perspective on the character, right? You know what I mean? And then just a simple meter. You don't need level 1 super. You don't need level 2 super. You don't need level 3 super. Again, maybe some supers do have a different version of it if you deem that is good for the character. But generally stay away from it because I don't think you need it. And you can make it interesting by just doing a CVS2 kind of thing that then still would appeal to a guy who likes to lab or likes to do combos. You know what I mean? It adds a little bit of spice to it, right? Again, this video is already really long, but I could talk about all the stuff I would do for fucking Street Fighter. And again, this is just a Street Fighter game. And even this, I think, sounds pretty fucking crazy for a Street Fighter game, right? Because there's no fucking perfect game, right? All games have their good and bad. So I could talk more about this if people really like these nerdy conversations. I could actually go in depth with how I think characters could actually work. But anyway, the end for now.